even said that the SWIFT transactions were off the table, which I think was ridiculous. We should never have said that we weren't considering that. That's probably the greatest deterrent of all. I did note from what she said at the press conference today that he was going to stay in Washington, D.C., which means I guess he learned a lesson from his debacle in Afghanistan when he went on vacation in the midst of all that crazy stuff. At least the president learned one thing.
Let me ask you about diplomacy, because he kept using that word. He still says that there is some sort of diplomatic solution. And of course, Vice President Kamala Harris traveling to Munich. She's going to lead the delegation there with respect to the security conference. Zelensky's on his way as well. You ask yourself, all these leaders meeting at the 11th hour when we're on the verge of something, potentially really gruesome here, especially with respect to people on the ground within Ukraine. And you ask yourself, hasn't the time for diplomacy passed?
Well, I would say diplomacy never ends. Even if conflict begins, you're going to be talking about it. So in terms of the technical question of when does diplomacy end, I would say never. But once the bullets start flying, those sanctions are coming, and they have to be swift.
And of course, Vladimir Putin's, his goal here, his concern, what started this all is the potential expansion of NATO. And he's trying to make a bold point here, right? If the president wanted to exercise diplomacy, he could have had conversations with Putin behind the scenes, essentially saying that Ukraine isn't joining NATO and could have tamped down on a lot of this. And so many people are saying, why didn't he do that? Why did he let it get to this point?
It's a great question, but one of the things that we as an alliance, NATO, and as Americans, we want to say that we can have our friends, we can pick our friends, we can pick our alliances. I mean, a sovereign state has the right to decide who its alliances are. Just saying, well, no, we're not going to let NATO in, and Russia gets to tell us who our alliances are going to be. No, I don't think that should ever be on the table.
Well, I agree with you, but you could make the argument that there are a lot of reasons not to allow Ukraine into NATO. For example, the corruption that goes on in that country as well. And so I agree with you in the sense that you can't let Vladimir Putin tell you who you can be friends with, but at the same time, there are certain thresholds and requirements with respect to joining NATO, and Ukraine doesn't meet those.
Well, we actually considered Ukraine joining years ago, and because of the corruption, there was some delay. I will say that Ukraine is not the same country as it was in 2014. It's in a much better place. They have a thriving democracy, a very successful transfer of power from the last president to the current president. That country is moving forward. We just cannot let Vladimir Putin dictate who we make our allies.
Let me ask you this. If an invasion does, in fact, happen within the next couple of days, everybody's been eyeing Sunday. It's the end of the Olympics, and that's what they thought the timing, might look like. We've said that we will impose these harsh sanctions, but potentially the expectation is for bloodshed and a problem that could spiral out of control to a certain degree. President Biden has said that he's not going to send boots on the ground, but do you think that that is realistic if this conflict essentially, goes farther than he expected it to?
The real question is what does Vladimir Putin do outside of Ukraine? Does he launch cyber attacks or allow the, rogue entities within Russia to commit cyber attacks against the United States or other NATO countries? We're not going to send American soldiers to Ukraine because we don't have an alliance with Ukraine, and the Ukrainians don't want us to come. I was in Kyiv just a week or so ago, and Zelensky himself said, we don't need American soldiers, we need equipment. So, I don't see that happening. Now, if he does something with Poland or Romania, I mean, we're all in. We have an Article 5 obligation. I was in Iraq and Afghanistan with Polish soldiers there on the ground with us. That's the game changer.
Well, does it take a cyber attack against the United States? Does it take taking out our energy grid?
Yeah, so that's something that we have to have a response for. And I will tell you this, our offensive cyber is the best in the world. No one can touch us. And there is some classified information that was reported by the administration, the last administration, and we have a capability that is unbelievable. And he better not touch us. That's all I've got to say.
Congressman Mark Green, thank you so much for your time tonight, sir.
Thank you.
Good to